confidence.
Good evening. Welcome to the February 13th, 2018 meeting, Mardi Gras meeting of the Stowe Board of Selectmen. Yay! There we go.
Come on, there you go.
Is this what you wanted, Brian?
That's wonderful. Is there anyone here ready to give public input on a matter that is not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I go straight to Chairman's comments. First, I lost my right-hand man, our town clerk, or excuse me, our board clerk, Donald Hawks. He can't be here tonight, but in some kind of a compensation, Jim Salvi is with us tonight. He had to miss the last meeting because he was working cooperatively with law enforcement in the Chelsea section of Boston. He was in a high-speed pursuit in cooperation with the Boston police.
At public safety's request.
At public safety's request, and he's back from crime fighting. But I think it would make an excellent story if anyone from the press is interested in inquiring on it. But since he is back, and because we don't have our board clerk, I'm going to appoint Mr. Salvi as clerk pro tem for tonight's meeting to keep me straight, like Mr. Hawks does. Seeing no objection, so ordered. There are just a couple of announcements, but before I get to those announcements, I want to thank our distaff member, Ms. Hageman Clark, for her excellent job presenting at the Boy Scout Eagle Scout Court of Honor. It was very nice to hear Ms. Hageman Clark give the presentation to that Boy Scout because it concerned or his Eagle Scout project concerned a walkway along the Shepherd Memorial Trust land, and Selectman Clark was intimately involved or knowledgeable with that, so it added a nice air of familiarity to the presentation, and I thank her for doing that. It was, as I said, a commendable job. A couple of things that were just handed to me. Stowe Cultural Council seeks artists. It's going to be an art show at the Stowe Community Center on March 16th, 2018. Anyone with artists, or excuse me, with art, should put their works into the exhibit, and there will be awards. There's a off-highway vehicle safety and responsibility course at Fort Devens Museum on Saturday, April 21st at 10 a.m. Please see our administrative assistant if you are interested in that. There's going to be a community housing fair on Thursday, April 5th, anytime between 5 and 8 p.m. It's going to be, I guess, again, no, this will be at the Pompacitic Community Center Function Room, 509 Great Road. And I'll try to attend that. That sounds interesting. And finally, in the way of kudos, the Lieutenant Governor has sent our town administrator, Mr. Wrigley, a letter of congratulations for having completed the best practices as chosen as part of our community compact, which we signed together. I was there on May 26, 2016, fostering a strong partnership with our municipalities, and which is a top priority of the Baker-Polito administration. Congratulations, Mr. Town Administrator.
I take it on behalf of those in town who are actually improving the efficiency and cost effectiveness of our service delivery.
Under your guidance and supervision. Now, having said that, that brings us to meeting minutes. Mr. Salvi, as our clerk pro tem, do you have a motion for us?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the meeting minutes of January 9th, 2018.
Second.
Any corrections, additions, or amendments?
Looked good to me.
I didn't have anything.
Second clerk?
Nothing from me.
Then I will call for a vote. All those in favor of accepting the January 9th, 2018 minutes?
Aye.
Signal aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions, that's unanimous. I'll need another motion, Mr. Salvi.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be recusing from this one, but I can still do the motion. I move to accept the meeting minutes of the January 23rd, 2018 meeting as drafted.
I will second it for discussion.
All right. It looks, Mr. Ryan, as though you have some suggestions.
Just on page 2, it was under the new voting equipment. And the motion says to discontinue the use of the AccuVote tabulators and approve the purchase of new ImageCast precinct ballot tabulators. Maybe we discussed that, but we weren't really authorizing the purchase of them because they were already on their way. Town meeting had voted to, or already approved the purchase of it, but, so there may be a little bit of, I was thinking instead of purchase, approve the use of new ImageCast tabulators
I
versus.
think it was we were approving the payment of it, not the authorization of the purchase. It was the author.
Yeah, it was. a
We
little-
debated this last time.
Yeah.
I remember this, so.
I'd send them back.
Thank you, Mr. Town Administrator. Always help.
It's a minor thing.
What I would suggest, perhaps, for your consideration, is ratify the purchase and approve the use.
There you go. I think that makes sense.
I'm good with that.
To get that.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Ryan?
A fine job, Mr. Chairman.
I didn't do the minutes. It's Maureen's credit. Having said that, I'll call for a vote on the minutes of January 23rd, 2018. All those in favor?
As amended.
As amended, of course.
Aye.
And I will abstain.
So we have 3 ayes and 1 abstention. Thank you. Now, sorry, are you here for public input?
No.
Oh, good, thank you. Then, with the approval of my colleagues, I would like to advance item 7 to the next item on the agenda. That would be the discussion and vote for a special one-day liquor license for Neshoba Regional High School after prom committee fundraiser at the Pompano Community Center on Thursday, March 8th. Seeing no objection, ladies, would you like to come forward? And introduce yourself to the members of the board and to your neighbors here in Stowe at home.
Maureen Hogan.
Hi, Jim Salvi.
Don't worry.
Nice to meet you.
Maureen, nice to meet you. Hey, Julie.
Well, why don't you sit up front here? You can sit right up front. They don't want to get any closer than they have to. They're afraid of
You
the
were
beads.
throwing beads
I was throwing them
around
in.
earlier.
You're quite right. Do you want to tell us about this application? We have it, but maybe
Yeah.
you just briefly inform us what it's all about.
Sure. For the past couple of, I think Julie's been involved the last 3 years. And the last 2 years I've been involved. One of the fundraisers that we run for raising money for our after prom, which is a big party that we throw at the high school. A lot of decorating so it doesn't look like the high school. That's the idea. Trying to build as many juniors as possible coming to it instead of going to parties after prom in other places and therefore being out on the road. So the last couple of years we've done a fundraiser with this psychic medium. And it's been at somebody's house, but their kids have aged out now, so we don't really want to have it there. So we would like to have it at the center, but just want to have beer and wine available. It's not going to be a big party or anything like that, but, just kind of a...
It's not for sale. The tickets are for sale.
Right, tickets are for sale, yeah.
But the
The beer and wine, no, it's not for sale.
And we'll have snacks.
Yeah, just snacks and that. And the one thing that I do want to tell you though is the March 8th has changed. So I don't know if you can do this without having an exact date because we're going to have to move it. And I have to change, I've been talking with Courtney in the building department about, we'd like to do it on March 7th. There's already somebody in the function room. So there's a possibility of us using the room behind the reception desk. So anyway, can you approve this without having a definite date if it's still, the date is still in flux? Because that just came up literally today.
Yeah,
so.
these things happen. It's
Well,
unorthodox. I'll hear from my colleagues.
do you have at least a range?
Say that again?
Like a range, maybe a 5-day range, it'll occur during a certain week, maybe?
We asked the Spirit Medium if she could get back to me with, I gave her a few other dates, but they're later in March. They're like the 29th or down later in March. If we get it for March 7th and it turns out that we can't use the room or whatever that day, or can we just change the date? Is it easier to do that?
It would be easier to do that. Mr. Ryan, you had some thoughts?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about, I think I was along the same lines as Jim, probably thinking I was gonna say 7th or 8th or something like that. But if you're talking about in March, we have one more meeting before then. It might just be cleaner, you've explained what you're doing. I don't have any reservations about it, but it might just be better, I don't think we've ever approved one that says it's kind of on a floating date.
You don't want to have a liquor license, God forbid something happens, that says March 8th, and you're not serving on March 8th, you're on some other date.
Okay.
So,
Can't your psychic tell you when it's going to be?
I was going to make that joke. I thought of that too.
I apologize for stepping on your line, Mr. Salvi.
But are you saying that you have another meeting before March 7th? Or
Yeah, we have one on we have one 2 weeks from today, so it's still in March,
February.
or February.
It's jammed, so we're going to make sure that you're first out.
Well, they wouldn't need, I would say that after they've already come, they've explained it to us,
I'm not sure you even need
I
to.
don't think they would need to come back unless.
True.
Just give you the date that.
If you
Give
just
us
send
a
an
date,
email.
Just work with Maureen.
All right, let's do that then.
You'd rather wait for a definitive date.
Yes, a definite date, and we appreciate that. And also, when you submit the new liquor license, maybe just a little bit about what you're going to do to make sure that the beverages are not, distribution of the beverages, the alcoholic beverages, are going to be under some kind of supervision or control.
Oh, okay, sure.
Just identify somebody who's going to be responsible for overseeing that.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, can we ask that question now? How they're going to manage that?
Of course. Do you have an answer to that, or do we have to go to the psychic again?
Well, these drinks are for the students that are over?
No,
No.
Oh,
This is just adults at the fundraiser.
oh, this is an adult fundraiser?
Adults.
Oh, I
Right.
misunderstood what it was.
Yeah.
I do too.
Well, when I first read it, I'm like, Neshoba's having cocktails for the kids?
Well, it says
Sorry, I
after
assumed that
prom
when I said
party,
kids,
so
you'd
I
know.
was, all right, let's.
Perhaps it's because I'm familiar
That
with
was
the
the
after
case,
prom
you couldn't
and the
license
fundraisers.
them.
This is
By
an after
definition.
prom party fundraiser.
Yeah.
It's a
That's not
fundraiser.
the way it came
Yeah,
across.
fundraiser.
I had to
for-
read it twice myself, but.
It just says the after prom party. Oh, I see, I get it now.
Is there
Okay, makes much more sense.
any probability that 2 weeks from tonight you wouldn't have a date?
We better have a date. Yeah.
I mean, you could approve the licensing contingent upon having received a specific date by 2 weeks from tonight. Then all you have to do is plug it in.
And then Maureen does the paperwork after.
Right.
That's a helpful
I mean, we'll
suggestion.
probably have it tomorrow or the next day. She'll
Yes.
get back to me by tomorrow.
Well,
Okay.
I'm happy to do it that way, but as I said, if, in addition to getting us a date, you can show us what kind of control you have in place about the distribution of the alcohol and making sure that it only gets to, not students, to the adults.
Yeah, well, there's no student, it's really only
Yeah,
adults.
okay.
Yeah.
at
You intend to
this.
have somebody in charge
Right.
so that somebody doesn't
Yeah,
drink too much.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. Us,
Yeah.
you know, we're gonna be
Yeah.
the ones setting it
I
up.
mean, you could name both of them as being in charge of the event
Right.
and subject to getting a date certain by the next time you meet. The contingent tonight, take the vote.
When's our next meeting, February 27th?
February 28th.
28th?
Oh,
That's a Wednesday.
27th, excuse me, 2 weeks from tonight. Yeah,
So-
we can do it that way, and you won't have to appear. The But this is going to require some, in order to make the motion, it's going to require some thinking on the feet, so to speak, so I'm confident Mr. Salvi can do it for us.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve and sign a special one-day liquor license for the Neshoba Regional High School After-Prom Committee fundraising event at the Pompo Community Center on a date and time to be specified on or before our next meeting on February 27, 2018.
Second.
And with the applicants, Maureen Hogan and Julie Fish, being responsible for the event and for the liquor distribution. Do I understand that correctly?
So moved, yes.
Sure.
Is that acceptable to you, ladies? Then I'll call for a vote unless there's further discussion. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hey, thank you very much for coming in and let us know, and let Maureen know.
Thanks, have fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You're all invited to it.
Thank you.
It's
So,
a great
As
event.
long as we bring $40, right?
It's $40 to get in, but it's really, it's fascinating.
You definitely want to get us that date before our next meeting, because we have to actually sign it?
Absolutely.
Sign it.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'll get it next day or two.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate my colleagues allowing us to take that out of order. We have a couple other items that maybe can go first. Is there someone here from the Stowe Cultural Council? Would you please come forward, introduce yourself, give us your address, and then explain to us what this liquor license request is all about.
A lot of those type. I'm Rick Lent, 154 Taylor Road, Stowe, co-chair of the Cultural Council. So we are doing two things on the night of March 16th in the community center. One is we're recognizing the people that were awarded grants this year for various cultural events in town. And that's from 6 to 7, and we're encouraging, you guys have all been invited. I don't think we've heard from any of you yet that you're coming. We have heard from Jamie Eldridge that he's coming.
I have to check with my wife.
Haven't heard from Kate Hogan yet. But last year we did it in a different way. We did in conjunction with Maynard and the movie theater. But this year we're just doing it here. And it's a nice recognition event. It's pretty simple. But it is also the opening of the Stowe Community Art Exhibit, which is sort of the big thing for us. And we are inviting all the artists that night. It's a classic artist reception. And the formal beginning of that is at 7. So in effect, we're doing this just before that. And so we're asking for a liquor license for that night. We're going to have food and snacks because it's an art show opening, essentially. And now we're also making a celebration of the awardees. We won't be selling. We'll be getting donated wine and buying the cheese and crackers and stuff like that.
And you missed it, but I did mention it in our chair's comments before you came in, the event.
Oh, okay, great, wonderful, thanks.
I didn't sell it as well as you, though.
Okay.
Any questions for the applicant?
I notice it says it's the first annual, so you hope to do this every year. I think
Yeah.
that's really wonderful.
We hope so. I mean, we do have a lot of artists in this area.
You do, there's a
Um,
lot of them.
And we think it'd be a great thing. And we put, last year, March 17, we invested in, the Culture Council put the money in for a proper picture hanging system in the community center, so you'll see it in use. I mean, other people will use it too, it's not just ours, but we'll have that there so that we can hang the art in a way that it can be viewed well. Because originally, when the community center was built, it was actually built in one place with good lights and a ceiling that show off this wall well. It's the long wall, it's a very long wall, so we can hang a lot of art there, so.
Well, I'm putting it in my calendar.
okay.
Yeah, I don't recall the invitation, but
I
I'll.
don't know.
I think Maureen.
See, when I mention it, they just
Yeah.
ignore it, but when you talk about it, they put it in their calendar.
Right.
That's why I'm
pretty
here.
much right.
That's true of everything.
That's true, quite right. Well, so I am glad you appeared, Mr. Lent, and
Thank you.
just as I asked the other applicant, is there gonna be somebody in charge of
Yes.
distribution of the alcohol.
Yes.
And who will that be?
Well, it could be me, could be somebody else that I delegate. Is that possible?
Uh,
I'll be there.
As long as you're overseeing it, then you can delegate it that night. We just need to have somebody who's responsible to make sure that the alcohol is distributed or given out in a responsible manner.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments from my colleagues?
Do you want me to add that to the motion?
Yes, please.
One thing I was gonna comment on also is, this is actually a town-sponsored committee, or
We are the
organization.
town, in effect.
All right, so one of the things I was going to suggest is on this is that we also vote to waive the fee.
Ah,
Is that for us to waive?
We have done that before when we do the,
You're not talking about the fee for the community center, you're talking about
the
the
fee
fee
for the liquor license.
Got it, yes, okay. Thank you.
what a wonderful
I didn't
catch,
know there
Mr.
was
Ryan.
one.
Pardon?
I didn't know there was one yet, so I would have asked. Okay.
Then I
But
will
we,
add that to the.
we have typically done it when we ended up having,
Maybe there won't be any fee for the rental either.
Well,
Draft.
let's not get ahead.
That's not for us to decide, right?
Not to-
Okay.
No, that should, it will be. You have-
Yeah, but not tonight,
Let
but not
Tom
tonight.
finish.
But send them away with some encouragement. For Christ's sake.
Yes, but let's focus on what we have to do. Mr. Ryan made an excellent point, and as usual, a great call.
yeah, no,
Catch.
we've just done it, when we do the highway department, when we had our function at the community center also, Board of Selectmen, we waived the fee on ourselves, so.
I have no problem with that. Does anyone else?
No.
Then we're waiting on you, Mr. Salvi.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve and sign a special one-day liquor license for the Stowe Cultural Council's Grant Awards Ceremony and first annual Stowe Art Exhibition at the Pompo Community Center, with the applicant Rick Lent being responsible for the responsible distribution of alcohol on Friday, March 16, 2018, between 6 and 9 p.m., and to waive the fee for this license.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much for doing this, Mr. Lent. Good luck to you, and let us know if we can be of any help.
Thank you.
And if you really think it'll help, I'll show up. I'll try.
Great.
Bring your paintings with you.
My
I have to
etchings.
submit them this
My
month,
etching.
though. There's a deadline this
How
month.
many can you do in the next week or two?
All right,
Sculpture or, anything.
ma'am,
Yes.
what, pardon?
SpringFest committee?
For
Yes.
SpringFest. Why don't you come on up, and that way we can get you in and out, and
Do you
And
want a liquor
please-
license too? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, maybe later.
Leave with whatever you can take.
you know.
Tomorrow.
Aye, checks out.
Thank you very much for coming in.
All right.
Hi, Abby Moore.
Hi, Maureen. Good to see you.
Why don't you please introduce yourself to your friends at home and with the, I'm great, okay, Tom.
My kids who are watching.
Your kids?
Yeah.
Are watching?
I think so.
Oh, say hey.
I told them not to.
My kids won't. My kids won't want it, man. I'm here every meeting, but
Would they like some beads?
yeah.
I'm sure they love
We would have let them submit questions for you.
Bring them home some Mardi Gras
Oh,
beads.
thank you.
Thank you for volunteering. Why don't you tell, we've got your application, we've got your papers. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your interest in the SpringFest committee and your qualifications?
Okay. Well, I love SpringFest. I've been going every year since we moved here 11 years ago. I live right across the street, so it's really in my backyard.
And you're
That
Morrow Highland
happens.
from 4 Crescent Street.
4 Crescent, yeah. So, I don't know. I've always been impressed by the event and by the fact that, you can bring your family there and not spend any money, which is huge these days. And then my friend Sarah joined the committee a few years ago, and I was really surprised when she told me that there were only 3 women running the whole thing. So I was compelled to help, but I didn't have too much time. I volunteered the last 2 years just to help out the day before. But this year, I feel like I can do more, so I'm compelled to join the committee and do what I can. I've already rallied a lot of supporters, friends who are willing to volunteer their time, and
That's great.
I have a management background, so I think I have a lot to bring to the table.
I'm sure you do, but I'm going to turn to my colleagues for their questions or comments, but first I'm going to turn to Mr. Ryan, who probably has historically more experience with SpringFest than certainly anyone at this board, but maybe anyone in town.
Well, my wife and a number of other people restarted it after a long hiatus. So my wife goes back probably close to 20 years with it, and she did 15 years, so I think you ended up taking over, partly took over, and Karen took over, but, you know, it's something that's been, it's worked out very well over the years, and I very much appreciate, you know, you stepping forward.
Thank you.
When we started it, or when my wife started back up, I think my kids were 6 and 7 or so, and they're in their late 20s now. So they're, you know, it was, you know, well, it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
But in order to keep it going, we need people like yourself to step forward and, you know, take the reins. I'm usually up there every year helping out. And, you know, I will be again this year, but not to the not to the point where I used to 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's thank you very much for stepping
You're
forward.
welcome.
We all are. We'll all try to help out. We've got your letter of recommendation from Sarah Salomon.
Oh, great, yes.
Any other questions or comments from my colleagues?
Thank
Just
you.
thank you very much for
Okay.
stepping
You're
forward.
welcome.
Thank you.
Okay,
One second.
okay. yeah.
Then I will take a motion. Mr. Selby.
Mr. Chairman, on the recommendation of members of the SpringFest Committee, I move to appoint Maura Highland as a member of the SpringFest Committee to complete an unexpired 2-year term expiring June 30th, 2018.
Second.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Can we get
That's
Jamie's
unanimous.
band in again next year?
What? Jamie?
Oh, that was, and the band played out back last. Yeah.
No.
Prism.
Yeah, so
I'm sure they'll
put in
do
a good word for Jamie.
I'm sure they'll do a great job.
One thing just to remember is you do have to get sworn in by the town clerk. You become an official member, you have to sign your life away, and
No, just,
wear a tracking band.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Sarah will tell me, you'll,
Yeah.
okay.
she might be downstairs still.
Well, but she needs the little slip.
And
to get
we don't have that
sworn in.
ready yet?
I don't think so.
No.
You might just stop by, and I'm sure our town clerk will know
Okay.
why you can by.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
close, so.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, now, I think I'm confused, not everyone, myself, but we've got a, let's see,
Thanks.
Poll hearing.
the poll hearing. I guess that's next, but I did jump over correspondence. Is there anything correspondence that anyone wants to address? That's usually our regular clerk's bailiwick. Seeing none, then I will get to the poll hearing, and you'll forgive me. It's mostly ministerial. I don't believe we have a representative. Nonetheless, I do have to read something.
And the thing you have to read,
That's not it.
that's not it. That's not it.
Maybe we should have stuck to the order. I apologize to my colleagues.
Only a packet, took a minute.
No, I don't need those right now. I keep it electronically. This is everything. Thank you so much. Again, I do apologize to my colleagues for not having this handy. Notice is hereby given in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 166, Section 22, that the Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing regarding pole locations request by Hudson Light and Power Department to locate utility poles as follows. Walcott Street, Stowe, relocate existing pole number 8-and-a-half, approximately 30 feet west of existing pole locations within municipal space The new location shall be along edge of pavement numbered pole number 8-1/2 Walcott Street as shown in the attached drawing. This pole will be necessary for HLPD to provide electrical service to the Jillian's Lane subdivision approved by the Stowe Planning Board on February 14, 2017. The relocation is due to the fact that the proposed subdivision roadway is shown to be constructed in the middle of an existing pole location. In addition, install a new 40-foot Class 2 wooden utility pole within municipal space approximately 84 feet west of existing pole number 9 Walcott Street. This pole shall be along the edge of pavement, numbered pole number 8-3/4 Walcott Street, as shown in attached drawing. The pole will be necessary for HLPD to provide electrical service to the Jillian's Lane subdivision approved by the Stowe Planning Board, again on February 14, 2017. The public hearing will be held on Tuesday, February 13, 2018, at 7:15 p.m. in the Stowe Town Building, 380 Great Road, Stowe, Massachusetts. Have I read that correctly?
I believe so.
I hope so.
Very reassuring, Mr. Ryan. Now, as I understand it, Maureen, and you can,
I can talk about
you can
this
talk
if
to
you like.
this.
Sure.
This is mostly a clerical.
Yes, Pat Laverty from Hudson Light and Power could not be present, but I explained that I could let you know what was happening. Basically, what happened was we approved the polls in July or August, and the clerk receives a packet with all the information, gets filed, notarized and such. There was a typo in that information that you originally approved, and because it was a numerical typo, we thought it would be best just to go back and re-sign it with the correction, which in the second paragraph that talked about 115 feet west of the existing pole number 9 was actually supposed to be 84 feet west of the existing pole. The diagram had it correct. Just either side of the roadway will be the poles. So nothing has changed. They were just calling it a typo, but I thought it would be best to come in and have it in the public. All the butters got notices of this hearing, so it's on the up and up.
Well, no, I'm sure it was, of course it was on the up and up, and thank you for
Sure.
digging down into this one and explaining it so well to us. Before I take questions and comments from my colleagues on the board, is there any butter here who wishes to be heard on this poll hearing? Seeing none, do my colleagues want to chime in with their input before we close the hearing or after?
I don't really have any input on a typo, other than,
Well, then let's close the hearing. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to close the hearing.
second.
All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
And we're supposed to have the clerk sign that.
Opposed? The clerk pro tem.
So, but I just have one,
No, now we can but everybody's agreed that the hearing is closed, no more public input,
okay.
right? That was
Yes.
unanimous?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear unanimous, but I'm gonna call it unanimous. Now, Mr. Salvi, your questions.
Just, so Maureen, your understanding is that this isn't a change in where the pole is going, just,
Not at all.
It was
There's
always
the
intended to be
diagram,
84
right.
feet.
And I've spoken to Jesse just to verify.
oh, okay, because
Yeah.
I can't find 84
Yeah.
feet, but I will take
If it were a regular typo, I wouldn't have brought it up, but because it was numerical.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I am ready to make a motion if you are ready to hear it.
Thank you, I am.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve and sign the amended application by Hudson Light and Power to relocate an existing pole and also install a new pole on Walcott Street at locations specified in the order for joint or identical pole locations received by the Selectmen's Office December 28, 2017.
Second.
Any further discussions or comment? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
I was gonna ask
Aye.
a quick
Nope.
question.
Oh, I apologize, I'm sorry.
So where's Jillian's Lane? Is that next Walcott Street, next to?
I think it will be.
It's going to be off of Walcott Street.
Well,
It's,
I know that, I see that, but what's
Mhm.
this street? It's
That's-
under construction.
That's Walcott Street.
That is
I believe.
Walcott Street. Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure. So this is under construction. Okay, thank you. You can now call the vote.
Well, no, if you're,
I just didn't know where it was, that's all.
it's quite all right. You should know what you're voting on. I'm sorry if I was rushing you. Anything else? Any other questions or comments?
This is where Kathleen Rose Phillips used to live, right? Well, let's get specific.
Is that going to be necessary to be answered before you
All right,
take a vote?
I guess not. I see it.
I thought I saw a woodchuck out there one day.
All right.
You
I
started
know,
it.
I did, I started it. You guys.
But
are
everyone is
vote.
now satisfied that they have all the information necessary to render a vote on this application for a
Yeah.
poll hearing, for poll placement? All right, then, all those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nay. That again is unanimous. Thank you.
By the way, it was a very valid.
Thank you,
point
Maureen.
that you had.
Sure, let the vote to close the hearing. Yes.
Now, according to our agenda, it's a discussion of the Board of Selectmen of the 2017 annual report. I'm not sure that we, we need to take this vote this time, and I'm not sure that discussions are really necessary. If people have edits or comments, they can submit them to Maureen. She gave me first shot at it, and I want you all to have first shot at it. I want you to have some time to look it over. So, but that's generally what we're thinking about putting out in the town's annual report. Does anyone have some overall or overarching comments they want to make?
I thought it was very good.
Yeah, I found a couple, I'll call it typos more than anything else in there, but overall, I think it was pretty good. It goes on to say kind of what we did. I didn't see any major flaws in it.
All right, please direct your edits to to our administrative assistant, Ms. Hageman Clark. Do you have any thoughts,
I
sir?
have none, I thought it was fine.
Well, great job, Maureen.
Your help.
But I would just recommend that, and also we can, maybe you can let Mr. Hawks know that if he's got any thoughts or any minor edits, just submit them. As long as they're not changing the general theme,
Okay.
then they can just be incorporated, and we can take a vote on a final draft next meeting, and that
Sure.
should be quick. And especially, does anybody think that we should have mentioned something that wasn't mentioned?
I haven't thought about it that much.
Perhaps we got it to you too late.
I'm thinking litigation, but no, probably not. None of it's resolved. We didn't resolve any litigation in 2017.
We never resolved litigation.
That's true. I think we do.
Actually, Jim, I think
Actually, we did.
It could be worth mentioning now that you mention it, because it's regarding the Collins Museum.
Yes, the Tank Museum. Does anybody want to give us a little paragraph on that?
That was more the planning board thing.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
I would check with them before you start
Yeah.
Stealing their thunder?
Well,
Yeah, no,
it's their case, and,
Yeah.
to the degree that some of us were involved in the settlement, but.
Yeah, we were involved, and we showed up. We showed up at the hearing. But
I'll leave that to you, I'm just saying.
No,
I leave it, if somebody has what they think might be a useful addition to the annual report from the Board of Selectmen, send it in. We'll run it by Jesse and make sure that we're not stealing their thunder. But if people feel strongly that it should be commented upon as something that the board accomplished, let's put it in. But
I don't feel that strongly about it.
I don't either. Not the Tank Museum thing. I was just thinking out loud if there's anything else, and there isn't.
Aye.
But,
I'm all about the process, gentlemen and lady. If you have something, put it in. If you don't, we can move on. So I'm not going to call for a vote on that tonight. And it seems like we're going through this fairly quickly. We now have the presentation discussion of the town administrator's preliminary FY 2019 vote. I cannot recall, fiscal 2019 budget, excuse me. I cannot remember. I know I sent this around to FinCom. Did I send this around to everybody to take a look at?
What is this?
Did you do it by email?
By email? Do we?
No.
May have, I don't recall.
This is a guide to financial management of town officials. I tend to read it every year around this time. Again, this is not to, it just is an explanation of the financial responsibilities of certain boards, especially boards of selectmen, the budget systems and processes, and it's useful just so that we understand our role in this. It is not, of course, to supplement or to substitute for the guidance of our town administrator, the chief financial officer. If anything, it is just to help us appreciate the level of skill and wizardry the town administrator brings to bear on the budget every year.
I think it's also true that that's written without a town charter as a governance agreement in place, which would supersede that. As to process and due diligence, it's fine. So, you have the Excel report. It's unchanged with regard to its layout, format, and content. For many years, it's remained the same. I provide you with the attendant narrative that intends to speak to prominent substantive matters, not every line item. There's 600 line items in here. And also happy to answer any questions now or going forward. So this is basically to get us started, get us on the board. And on the first page, what you have in the first column is the voted budget for this year. So that's the baseline for all the percentage comparisons are running off FY18. The top half of it is listing of substantive revenue. Here the word income is used for operations and capital. And then the lower half of the first page totals up expenditures. And so you've got a balance sheet essentially here. As I've explained in my narrative, and it's true each year, what you've got for the top half on income, you back into tax levy. So in the top half of this, property tax 28,374,429, which is the second column from the left. It says 2018 annual town meeting FY19 budget requested. Requested relates to expenditures and not the revenues. So property tax at 28,374,429 is the total amount of taxes that could potentially be raised, because in this total, as I've told you before, is the unused levy capacity that we have. And so it isn't the amount of the taxes necessarily being raised. It's what could be raised if it was necessary, but it's not necessary here. And I'll tell you what that tax amount is. So the first substantive, real, actual figure in play here is the state aid, which is showing a 3% increase. I'm relying on the governor's budget at this point. It's still a plug number though, because before the process is complete, and until the process is complete, I won't know what the state aid number is, because the House and the Senate have to weigh in and then they have to get together. And so months ahead. But at such a small percentage of the total revenues, I'm not concerned one way or the other. My guess is it's going to be around 3% plus or minus when they're done. And that's basically non-school state aid. And the biggest single figure in that is lottery funds, which is the unassigned money. So I've bumped the current year's total 3%. And I'll adjust it when I get different numbers going forward. The state aid school building assistance number is essentially the reimbursement from MSBA on the Hale School. And we're unloading, retiring totally the Hale School debt in 2020. Okay. Essentially what will result then, the total annual debt payment for Hale School is $744,000. They contribute to $542,000. So once you back that out, we're not receiving it anymore. and the debt goes away, we're netting about $200,000 in an overall reduction in our annual debt. We're able to debt exclude, as you know, anything that we voted for debt exclusions, and this is one project that we have done along with others. That's just to editorialize. Local receipts, the next revenue source, I've bumped it 6.06%, and essentially what I rely on is the last complete fiscal year's actual receipts, and then year-to-date collections compared to previous months to date in previous years. And so 1,750,800 is the actual total local receipts revenues collected in 2017. We're running a little ahead of that year-to-date in 18, so I'm comfortable in using that number.
Do you mind taking questions as we go along?
Sure,
Mr.
that's
Secretary?
I'm happy to.
Is the increase that you've seen in these receipts, does it have anything to do with people maybe paying their property taxes early?
No, typically that doesn't show up there.
Okay, never mind. Thank you.
I'll take the property tax though if I can get it.
I gave you some.
No, that's probably say.
Looks like it's the motor vehicle excise.
Yeah, typically that's the largest single line item in the
Yep.
total revenues. But and just as a plug number here, because I'm not making a running total change on all the line items for local receipts.
Yeah.
There's too many of them. So what I do so this is just a total of, what won't match up is the line items if you go to my detail on local receipts on page 3. Because basically all I did is I backed into the line items and plugged in mostly above at motor vehicle excise. I just got the total down below that's relevant, which is the 1,750,800. Okay? Transfer from other funds, that's budget neutral and it's insignificant with regard to budgeting. With regard to free cash though, I think it's worth a moment or two. As I've said to you, I intended to increase significantly the use of free cash in this budget. And so at this moment, I'm using $700,000 of free cash. And that number gets us down to, when we were interviewing and discussing with Standard & Poor's on getting to triple A bonding, they were looking at between 5 and 10% of stored assets towards as a ratio with the total budget. So I used this year's budget amount. I backed down to 10%, which is just about spot on at 700,000. And I've broken it up. I'm showing $500,000 free cash for capital projects and free cash under what's called income used for operations. But the only reason I've got it plugged in up there is because I'm hopeful in the end that our non-borrowing capital projects come down to an amount of this year, which would get me under 700,000. So I want to use 700,000. I put 5 and 2. I go 6 and 1, but I'm putting in $700,000 this year, and I'll find some place for it. If the non-debted capital that gets approved at town meeting, though, is say 500, right? Then I've got to show a line for the use of that available fund somewhere else, because the capital is only 500. I can't put 700 in it. So that's why I've just broken up, thinking if we get there. But because for me, the purpose is using 700,000. Significant increase over this year at 430,000. But again, I'm trying to get. I'm moving down to a percentage against the total budget of 10%. Also, I may use more than 700,000 because I'm going to apply. You've got to apply available funds to make up the snow and ice deficit. Or put it on a tax recap. We can do it either way, but I'd prefer to this year that I know I've got plenty, because we had a huge increase this year. We're at 2,787 million at free cash, and with stabilization, which is together, which makes up our stored asset. That total gets to 10%. That's what I'm not taking out of stabilization, so we're leaving that there, so it's coming out of. So I'm getting down to 2 million in free cash. Still, healthy figure. And so I might take another 100 out of that if I need it for. We're not zeroed out on our balance for snow and ice yet, but we will be soon. In any event, I'm thinking maybe 50 over, and then I've got another purpose to use free cash for monies that last August in a special town meeting I had plugged in at free cash, but then was told, not only can't you spend free cash until it's certified, you can't vote it. And so it usually comes in September, and it was 2.8 million, but I had 30,000 in there for helping the highway out in payment towards the engineering that's going on with the dam. And so I've got to make that up. We had available funds from the budget to spend, but going forward, so I probably have another 30 in there, so I might have 80, and I'll take that out of free cash as well. Because we're still at 9% or more, even if I take 780,000.
So then you'd be up around 800,000, or 800 and,
Well, 780,000 probably.
yeah.
You know, but my feeling is this, I mean, obviously, the intent here is to save the taxpayer, and I think we do that here, and down below, you'll see that this affects it along with some other things.
Can I just make one comment, and basically it's for the uninitiated that might be watching.
Uh-huh.
With your talking about, it's exactly what you said, that by using this free cash, it'll end up having the effect of reducing the tax rate. You're not going out and spending money that we don't have, you know, and just some people that might have been watching might not have understood. You're saying, I've got to spend this here.
It's previously
spend
tax
there.
appropriated money, they've already paid
Correct.
it. So this is taking and reducing taxes by not having to tax more to balance this budget. They've already paid for it once, so $780,000 plus or minus, I'm going to apply from previous tax appropriation, which is now unrestricted available funds called free cash. So that's $780,000 left. If this budget was voted, and it's not the one we're gonna vote on, and I hope to reduce that more, but $780,000 that otherwise would have to be raised by taxes is gonna come from available funds.
And we'll still have stored assets of about 10% of the budget.
Just under 10%, probably 9 point something, but close to 2 million in free cash plus 800,000 in stabilization, which we're not touching. So, that's the significant figures up above with regard to, I'm gonna use overlay surplus for the OPEB, which we began making an annual payment 5-6 years ago on it. So bottom line is 32, what we have available if we needed to for revenues, including maxing under Prop 2.5 taxes, we have available 32,192,030, which is an 8.56% increase above the current year, not what we're going to be appropriating, okay? So that figure's not significant as it relates to the actual balance sheet. So underneath expenditures, which are the significant numbers to be cognizant of, general municipal budget total. As you know, general municipal budget total, what I mean by that is all the departmental operational budgets, salaries, expenses, together with townwide insurances and others. That's what I'm calling that. That total on the board right now is $6,945,992, which is only a 2.1% increase above the current year. Okay? I hope to get it below 2%. I've already made some adjustments in this. Just after the first meeting, it was agreed, taking some numbers off some areas. That's in here. I've got others to do, but where it sits now, the high water mark is 2.18%. That's half of the increase that we had from 17 to 18, which was over 4%. So we've cut the rate of increase in half. From over 4% was 4.3 to 2.18, and I hope to get under 2, and I think I can. Okay. So I think that's important. It should be. So we've done it this year alone, and I will say this, and I've said it before, but I think it's important to repeat it. Our public safety departments, which are our largest departments with regard to budget numbers, collectively in FY19 with what's on the board right now, $3.3 million, which is 48% of the total the 6.945 million. You're almost half of that. They collectively are at 1/2 of 1% increase. That's with 2% COLA. They did a magnificent job. I'm very proud of them. Not that others haven't done it, and some not so much, but when your three largest departments do it with the most employees, and including unions, come in at 0.5% increase, I don't know what else to say except thank you very much. They work at it, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, their full-time equivalency, their head count, collectively, in 25 years has gone up less than one half of one full-time equivalently. They've been working with the same number. In fact, I think the police is down one from the time I got here, because we had layoffs the first year I applied. Say anything else you want about numbers and all the rest of it, and I just want to say that when the big dogs, you know, are making that kind of effort, it needs to be applied. Council on Aging this year, which is another big department, came in at less than 2%. So I want to say that would apply that. Other smaller budgets, some have done well, some not so well, but when you net it out, insurance is going down significantly, property and casualty. Okay?
Why is that?
Because we went in and we worked harder with our insurer. And I think Maureen will acknowledge that our persistence has paid off. And we're going, I've got a plug number of 153 from 179. Still haven't got the final experiential base for some of the fire and police, but I think it's going to be close to that if we use the number that for that portion of it that was applied this year, which I think was higher than it had to be. So we've reset there, and we're going to stay on top of it going forward. So that was a big reduction. IT's come in about level, which is good, and I've got some other adjustments to make in some of these. So I just think that's good news. The departments, sometimes with a little help, sometimes without, are doing a good job, particularly this year, and we'll try to hold the line going forward. The Neshoba Regional School District assessment is a plug number essentially right now. So I've got it at 5.1%, which, again, that's not a budget number. That would be our assessment, but that's based on a budget if it increases by less than 5%, but somewhere around 4.5,
yeah.
okay? Now, they're still working on it. I'm hopeful that they can help us a little more, and if they do, we're gonna take that. Minuteman is already on the board with assessment. Theirs is going up 15% though. Same number of students too. Now, part of that increase is the fact that we're starting to get loaded up on the Minuteman school for principal and interest on the debt. So I got from them a number finally about what our portion will be next year. In other words, what amount will be embedded in the assessment, because it won't come separately. I mean, the assessment's one figure, but in there is going to be our portion of the debt, and it's over 100,000. So when the project is done, my estimate's it's going to be over a couple $100,000 a year to us, just for our portion of that. But that's my guess right now, because they don't have the final numbers, because they haven't permanently bonded yet. But I've got 106,000 in there for that.
I attended the budget hearing, or the budget workshop by the Minuteman. It was last week. And, yeah, it's discouraging. Their operating budget's going down, but the actual assessments, as you point out, Mr. Town Administrator, are going up just to fund the...
It's a big number.
Well, we knew that.
When you
So
get
the
a-
meeting was like, oh, remember?
No, I know that. I'm reiterating that, though.
Sorry, I don't mean to take that apart. Go ahead.
It's, no, and I know I'm not saying anything new, and perhaps I should shut up, but the reason why I wanted to get into that was, we're going to get out of the indebtedness on the 1995 Hale School project. Is it going to be in 2020, or?
2020 is our last payment.
Is our last payment?
Yep.
Is there any way, or do we already have stuff coming online that's going to eat up the net?
Actually, we're essentially we'll be fully loaded on the Pompo Community Center before that. I think next year I'm almost fully loaded. So I don't think so. 2020, the project, the Minuteman School Building project's expected to be complete in time for the fall students. So that's gonna be 19. It will be 20. It'll be the year where we're gonna free up 200,000 that will probably be fully loaded first year with the Minuteman. That's based on my own experiences with that. I haven't seen their chart, so I don't know for sure when they, how long but they're completing the work in September, or by September of this year.
No, they got I think I reported to this board, they had an architect who advanced the construction.
So it's gonna be fully loaded
schedule.
ASAP from that moment, so it'll be,
Yeah, I know.
it'll probably be 2020, we get fully loaded, and so it might be a wash, it might be a push.
Is the Flag
That's
Hill
what I was
acquisition?
hoping for.
Huh?
That's what I was hoping for, but I think it's kind of ridiculous for me to hope at this point.
Well,
Just
what-
saying it made me realize.
It's not gonna hurt that we're retiring fully the Hale School in 20, given that we've now loaded up the Minuteman School and maybe be fully loaded in that year. And by my estimation, we're gonna be paying over $200,000 a year for our portion of the school. And I'm estimating now, I'm spitballing, okay, based on my own experiences. But I think it'll be over 200,000. We're at 1 now, so we're double up on that. We will be retiring Flag Hill. Number's not that big though, and, looking forward to whatever is going to happen at Neshoba. I mean, they've queued up for an SOI. I don't know, they don't, and I'm not gonna speculate on what they're going to do with it, but that's gonna be a significant project, whatever it is.
There was a point in the building, in the development of Pompo, that we thought that roughly the added debt from Pompo was gonna equal roughly the reduced debt from Flag Hill and Hale. But then.
Without Minuteman on the
But then
board.
Minuteman threw us off.
So, in any event, we're doing what we can to flatten the curve and extending financing and all the rest, but there are limits to what you can do.
Mr. Town Administrator, I think you summed it all up when you said we're doing what we can to flatten it out with the retirements and debt that's coming on. It may be that Minuteman brings on a couple more districts. That would be great, but, okay.
Let's not get into that, okay? I've got my own thoughts about it, but
All right,
I'll stick
okay.
with the numbers.
I think you're right, Ms. Hageman.
So in any event, student population remain the same, but it's going up
Yep.
15%, but the majority of that, just based on the numbers, is that they've loaded up debt.
Minuteman student population is going up 50%?
No. Our assessment is going up 15%.
15.
Our student population is remaining flat.
Got it.
So then what explains it, and I'm just telling you what it is. In large measure, it's the debt.
It's almost all.
So our debt payment at the moment for next year is estimated to be $2,423,567, which is a 3% increase over the current year. Another significant figure that, again, that's helping us is the raise and appropriate, which are the special articles, next one down. Right now on the board is $504,157, which is almost an 8% decrease over the current year at $547,621. Now, I've reduced, the things that have reduced that total in part is that, as you know, going into this year, I worried about our legal bills with ongoing cases and such. So I bumped it up from, I think it was 30 to 70.
That was a big bump last time.
Yeah, so I'm bringing it down to 40. So I'm bringing most of it back down. Looking at year-to-date, looking at what I carried over, look at what I spend between now and I'll continue to look at that figure, so I might massage it some, but I'm starting by reducing it by 30, okay? And I might tweak it plus or minus a little, but my intent is to keep it certainly lower than this year, and I can't imagine it'd be less than a 20%, that $20,000 reduction. I got it at 30 now. I might need to shift a little money. I'm looking at gasoline, fuel totals that I've bumped up already, but I don't, I gotta see where that trend is going, but there'll be a reduction in that figure in any event. The veteran services, as you know, we had a heavy hitter last year. A person who moved to Stowe, who was a veteran and needed living expenses and other things, And so there was a significant increase in that. Because that person is no longer in need of benefits, that one person, then that, if you go to page, where am I, 13? Page 12. All right, so these are the special articles, raised and appropriate, that I just referred to on the first page. So you can see where legal services this year was 70, and I'm going to 40. Veterans benefits down below, 53.4 this year, they're going to 35. Now, a couple increase, which is the Education Incentive Program. And just to explain that to you, and I think I've explained in previous memos the details of it, how many people, what's going on and stuff. The other thing to know is that because that's a recurring special article, it's not tied to a fiscal year, though I could, because it allows then, as I've got others, to carry over unexpended balances and therefore reduce the increases of an upcoming year.
How does that work theoretically, that you don't tie it to a fiscal year?
Just, the accounting principles allow it, and you go to your accountant, and I said, I'd like to not tie this to a fiscal year, it's gonna be a
It's kind of like
special
a
article.
revolving account or a revolving fund, I mean?
No,
or- No, it just.
no, we do have revolving funds, but that's not what this is. It
Yeah.
simply allows you
No,
to carry over unexpended balances, and this is the
For this-
nature of this service, and the nature of what's provided here, under the
I see.
accounting principles and DOR law, allows you to not put it in an operating expense, essentially, which is what has to be tied out to the general thing. So what, the luxury there is that if you not expend it all, because again, you're estimating.
Yeah.
Employees come and go, so you drop an employee who's been on it, it reduces it, therefore you carry it over. Now, if you picked up somebody so that I work forward on this, so that for budget purposes, if you get, the year you're hired in, you're not eligible to collect this. But the base salary of the year you were hired is what's used in the following year if you qualify and I approve it, so that I don't get banged mid-year with somebody coming in, qualifies for it, and I've got to come up with money, which means I'd have to have a contingency in it or otherwise. So I set the policy up. So last year, for example, we rendered that. We had monies available carried over, which reduced the overall budget increase.
The advantages are obvious. I just was trying to understand the accounting theory behind it.
Well, it's
You
the
just carry
same
over.
as-
I've got a number of them.
Yeah.
Legal's the same
Legal,
way.
yeah.
I've got on the list, I got about 8 or 10.
Okay.
Because of the difficulty trying to budget for these things, you'd either have to, the worst thing would be is that I would pad the budget, because I don't want to come up short. The worst thing you can do in our business is come up short when you got to balance it. If you don't have to balance the budget, it doesn't matter, we do.
Okay.
So, we did have a carryover balance last year, which I was able to apply, and at this moment, I took all of it, okay? And so, because it's only going up 5%, even though the budget number is larger than that, because I bought down the actual cost of this year with that carryover balance. You know what I'm saying? And I do that every year that I can. And I try to get as tight and as close as I can budget to actual there, but what I don't want to do is come up short. So, so that's the special articles raised and appropriate going down by 8%, which is a good sign. Okay, net. Appropriate transfer, again, budget neutral from up above, you saw the numbers. It's money we have available in one account, we transfer it to another account, and so it's budget neutral and it's not a significant figure there. And these are just plug numbers, these are based on this year's numbers, when Concom gives me their numbers with regard to wetlands, fees, and all the rest of it, I transfer it.
I have one question, Bill.
Yep,
I just noticed in there that there's nothing in there for the fire department water hole maintenance.
right, I took it out. They've been collecting for several years, and I do this, I look at the master account from planning board, the Concom's wetlands account. Every year they come in looking for money. I look at what they've been accruing. I'm not prophetic, but I look back, so I look the last 3 years and say, okay, what's the average expenditure to actual? And you're continuing to carry over money. And talking with the chief, I said, Chief, looking at what you have been accruing each year at 5, the total that you've got and what you've been expending, there's room there. And so he agreed with me that we'd take it out for this year, have him spend up to what he's got that he hasn't been, and then make adjustment the year after.
Yeah, it's just important to understand that, I think, because next year when we see it go back up to 5, it'll be a 100% increase after a 100% decrease.
Well, and maybe,
And-
and maybe it doesn't next year.
Right.
Now, I'm saying I'm not raising it if I don't have to in the given year, then I don't care if it goes up next year or not.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is, based on past years, not 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, to me, that's a pretty good benchmark. I've been doing this a long time, I get a pretty good sense of things. You're not spending what you're putting in, and now, based on what you've been spending on an annual basis, you've got it covered for next year and the buffer you've already got.
Mhm.
And these things, they do gradually and incrementally, so they can plan for that, you know, and I'm comfortable that they've got enough to, if they do water hole maintenance, new holes, other things they've got, that we can get it taken care of with what they've got
Right.
accrued already.
But again, this is the same principle as legal and everything else, that it's an annual appropriation, so they've still got money
Yeah,
left.
they-
It's not that they're not gonna do it.
Right, it's a carryover balance.
Right.
Carryover balance.
Yep.
I have a couple questions
Yep.
on the appropriate and transfer.
Yep.
So, can you just tell me what PEG is?
The what?
PEG, PEG?
Peg,
Oh,
TV.
public
Back of my heart.
educational and governmental, it's our Stowe TV.
Oh,
As you know, the law changed almost 2 years ago. They gave us a 1-year grace period. We jumped in, others tried to stretch it out. I'm not sure why. But, so we, last year at town meeting for the first time, put PEG funds as an appropriation to be voted by the annual town meeting, which we did. So now I've got it on budget,
okay.
where I didn't before.
the nice thing about the PEG funds is they come from the cable TV companies. And up until recently, the towns were just taking the money in and spending it any way they wanted. The new law that the town administrator was just talking about was a way to provide some kind of oversight in how that PEG money is being spent. Because quite frankly, almost all towns are awash in PEG funds. That just comes in.
Yeah, there's plenty of funds, and that's why I think DOR decided to get them on budget, because they're hundreds of thousands of dollars at these, because there's two separate accounts, the capital account and the expenditure for operating expenses account, both of them coming from cable payers in each town. So essentially, the taxpayers, those who also have cable, have already paid for this. And so it's important, and I agreed with DOR that they should be on the board now, because there's substantial numbers there.
We were providing, we were following close oversight even before that.
Oh, yeah, it's got nothing to do with, I mean, you filled out your budgets, I looked at them and all the
Yeah.
rest of it. That's not what it was for me, but it's, you know, it's, the legislative body now gets an opportunity to
Yep.
see what it is, and there are significant figures, and
I'm just suggesting there were other towns that needed this more than we did, and so essentially it's budget neutral.
yep.
Okay. And then my other question is cemetery sale of lots? They don't anticipate selling any, or what? Or
Where are you exactly?
still on appropriate and transfer, cemetery sale of lots?
What page are we on?
Sorry, 13?
Yeah, so they can decide when they wish to spend, no, they sell lots every
I
year.
know, because
No,
I was at the
No,
finance
they
committee
have,
when they were
they
talking,
have,
but-
they have exclusive control over two, under the statutes, of two accounts. One is perpetual care.
Mm-hmm.
Those are donations from folks who have grave sites that they've named, and they want special attention given to those grave sites, and others just donate, whatever you're doing to the cemeteries for perpetual care improvements, we're giving you money. Those that are discretionary, and they can spend that on any improvement at the cemeteries, roadways, whatever they want. Those identified for certain sites are reserved for that. Then the sale of lots, and they have control of that account. That sits there until they come forward. Only they can come forward and spend it and say, we'd like to spend. And I encourage them often, and we have extensive debate about, okay, before you ask the taxpayers for more money to do A, B, and C, especially because you're sitting on some money and it's not going anywhere, you know, let's look at your perpetual care and sale of lots. So this only relates to them coming forward, and they're not this year. to
Asking for
spend-
money.
And
Asking
spending
for money.
not, it's not that they're just
That's on the
selling it.
expenditure side of
Yeah.
the ledger.
The,
On the revenue side, there's nothing, it's zeroed out too. on-
Yeah.
on page
Yeah, because
three.
the only time I'd put it in is if they were asking to spend it, then I'd have to put it on the revenue. You have to put it on both sides of the equation.
Right,
So they're not asking for anything, so you're not gonna show a revenue or an expenditure, because they're not seeking.
I think some money got spent a number of years ago when we ended up buying some more cemetery land, didn't it?
Right.
They routinely come in for other projects. They've improved roadways. They're sitting on some money now. I mean, that's part of why they're not requesting, and I wouldn't be supporting, is that they've got some unfinished projects that they could finish, and there's money that's previously approved in special article, which will sit there until we can move it. You know?
Well, they, as you'll recall, last year, they made a tentative approach to capital planning for a structure over on Brookside. I think they're gonna do it again with a little more detail and preparation. I've been asked to go to one of their, the cemetery committee meetings tomorrow. So,
So that brings us to capital, as a matter of fact.
Ah.
So, oh, do you have another,
No.
another question? So here's where I'm hoping we can save some money and get the overall budget, which you can see here, right now, the total of $30,987,222 is 4.51% above the current year. And so what I did is a what if. If we back down, if what gets approved at town meeting for non-debt capital, our rolling stock, other things, the typical things. So if you look, this year, under capital, $690,773 was approved at town meeting. What's on the board right now is $861,505, which is the latest I have from the capital plan, from the chair. That is fluid some, so I'm not sure. It might have changed since then, but that's just what I have when I plugged it in here. If the 861, and I hope it is, reduced to something not exceeding what was in this year, 690, then we're gonna get a total budget increase if none of the other numbers change. I'm gonna bring down some of my own that I haven't made changes on. They're not big numbers, and I don't know, but I hope that Neshoba comes down some. But if it doesn't, and nothing else was reduced except that 861 to 690, we'll get to 387. And I'll get, and here's the important thing here, which is the tax rate. Under the current budget that I've got right now, which is the requested budget, okay? The tax rate this year was $20.98, okay? If this budget got approved, just as is, we'll reduce the tax rate to $20.50. If we get a 690 or better under capital, I'll get to 387 on the total for the budget increase and a $20.35 tax rate.
what would it take to get under 20?
Don't
Just
push
not
it.
happen?
I can go in there, yeah, I mean.
I'm sorry, it was
You can do anything
idle
with a
spec-
spreadsheet.
idle speculation, idle
You can do anything
speculation.
with a spreadsheet.
Yeah,
But it's on my wish list, but I realize that.
but it would have to come from the school district, the big dog, right?
Yeah.
And, because what I wouldn't be doing, to get to that number excluding the school district or capital, I'm cutting people. That ain't,
Can
But-
I ask a question about capital?
Yep,
There's one item, it's revenue neutral, but I don't see it here. The design funds for town hall, 175.
yes, because here's the other thing, community preservation committee funds,
Yeah,
off budget, like I used to do with PEG, until they force it on budget. And here's the only reason I don't, is because if you look at the numbers that they move at town meeting,
Yeah.
the administrative numbers are small, but shit, they can move millions of dollars at it, and you want to talk about spiking a budget year to year, they're up and down everywhere, and I'd be spending an hour and a half explaining why it moved that. So because it's all CPC funds for that one, the town hall, I didn't put it in there, but that's what I would do with it. If I put it in there, and then I'd go to appropriate and transfer,
right.
and I put it under CPC,
Okay.
so I budget, but I don't put it here for that reason.
The roof replacement might be, I think that might be CPC too. They're at least talking about it.
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about. Which one are you talking about?
Oh, I'm talking about the
Town hall roof
175. No. You don't have here $175,000 for design funds for town hall.
That's because I told they withdrew it. That's what I've been told. They're not asking for it. Now, if that isn't the case, did they come to you already?
Oh, yeah.
And did they, I think they might have withdrawn,
Oh, okay.
because according to what I got from your chairperson, that one got scratched. I think all they're going for this year is the $50,000 for the roof.
Our colleague, Mr. Salvi, wasn't here last meeting when we had Craig and Doug Hyde come in and talk about an update on the building use committee. And at that point, and, you know, maybe your memories will bear me out or not, they were just talking about roof replacement for town hall at this point.
I will double check on this. Even if it isn't here, it's totally CPC.
Right, so that's, I had the 2-line scratch, okay? And so if it is still in, that's fine, because it's all CPC, and I still wouldn't be plussing or minusing in here. But I
Okay.
didn't,
I just had coffee with the chair of CPC, and it was still on her list.
well,
We'll
you guys
figure
can
this out.
confirm that
We'll
one.
figure
In
it
any
out.
event, from my
Can
perspective,
the town hall roof replacement come out of CPC?
yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's
It
why
is,
it's not
that's
on
what I
there.
said. That's why it's not
He was-
here.
Yeah, because I thought that's what he was asking me about, which
Yeah,
is the
okay.
town hall. But both of those,
Well, that's how you're trying to get it down to 690.
well, no, because the 861 I'm on here doesn't have either of those in it.
Yeah.
And it does have 30 grand
No.
listed.
It has,
Yeah.
it's
It's
town hall
off.
roof replacement, does have 30 grand.
But are you sure? It could be just the way we're reading it.
Well, let me, if I did,
It
Oh,
does
no,
have-
it is. You do have it
Yeah,
in for 30,000.
the last one does
I
have
thought
town
it was
hall
a
roof
line
replacement
above.
30.
And I thought when you were blanking this out on the left side,
well, then Jesus, I cheated myself, didn't I? There we go.
oh, we got more money.
We're going in the right direction, folks, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be CPC.
Yeah, I got an iteration where I've already backed it out, but it wasn't since I wrote this one, so it's out. So that totals down another 30.
Are the cemetery, so why is the cemetery building fund making it, not making it to the 690 column?
Because it's last year.
It was last year.
Last year's, because we took it down. And this year,
Yeah, I mean, last year it went out.
well, last year went out.
Wasn't voted.
But in this year.
They're
it's
asking
still
for
in
it again this year.
Yeah,
And
they're asking, yeah.
Good chance it's gonna be the same outcome, but, you know.
I would hope so.
Only $50,000.
Well, all right,
That's for plans.
It's a
Oh.
prefab building, pre-designed too, so the plans are cheaper that way. but-
Right here. It's
Yeah,
right there.
you know, I would say maybe 50 grand for a building, not 50 grand.
All right,
for
so anyway,
plans.
I'm not.
well, that's what capital planning
Yeah.
will bet.
Okay.
All right, so to finish up a couple of things, so then you get the tax recap, okay, and that's going up 1.57. But there's a couple significant figures in there. One is our county retirement, which is set, it's uncontrollable. It's going up to 881,015, which is 6.58% increase. And then the overlay reserve, the assessors are worried about a few potential ATB cases. So I'm raising that from 178 to 228, 50 grand. And also, I'm gonna not take all of the overlay surplus that's available to me. As you know, the overlay reserve becomes overlay surplus, which is an available fund. Once the accountant basically says, these previous years' overlay reserves, and the assessors say, we don't need the money, we don't have any outstanding cases, all the rest, then it's available to me. And so rather than letting that become a stored asset, as you know, I spend it each year. So I had 150 available to me, I'm only spending 50. I'm gonna leave 50 in there, plus an additional 50, because they were thinking $100,000 total in difference, increase, potential. In any event, if it's not spent, it comes, we do get it back. So I just want to make note of that. Those are the only significant figures. I've got plug numbers in on the state and county charges because I think 3% is a, you know, I do have the mosquito controlled and that's only going up 2 point something. That's my real figure I have. The rest cherry sheet numbers that I don't get until it's balanced.
Do they do a significant amount? Oh, we have to pay that, right? That's the one.
Comes off the cherry sheets. So those are, you don't get, basically you get the bill from the state. So those details which are on that back sheet of the line items that we pay for. Where we do get significant, where we do make money on the state, and I probably shouldn't be saying this, is that, if you remember, we used to get the MBTA charge.
Mm-hmm.
But outer communities like ours were arguing, Jesus Christ, we don't use it as much as the inner city. And they were charging us for years, and then special legislation got passed that said, look, if we can argue that we have our own regional transportation, then they would basically offset it. And so essentially, our Council on Aging, we're able to charge Mart out of Fitchburg, is it?
For a van.
For-
basically, we use our own vans,
Mhm.
and the cost of our van maintenance, and we budget for van drivers. We send up to Mart every month, they send into the state, and that buys down fully what otherwise would be our 40-something thousand dollar a year Mart.
And a lot of the van payments, van expenses come out of Friends.
Right, and the Friends purchased, or grants, we've either had grants or
Yeah.
the Friends purchased them, so really, and there was some, I think, there was a question on the Finance Committee thinking that the Council on Aging got money directly from Mart, and that isn't the case. We don't get any money. What we do get is that from them, because of this offset, it goes right into the general fund, which it has to, but Council on Aging gets nothing from it, and I think there was, and I had Mart prepare, I had Allison get a statement from Mart to give it to FinCom, because they were thinking that, they wanted to know where the money from Council on Aging was going, and I said, they don't get any.
And we still have a token $1,900 MBTA charge?
Yeah, until we, so when, that's because they're estimating what we'll pay. That won't be there when we're done back charging,
Oh, I see.
you know what I mean? Anyway, it's one of those things.
One of those scams, I understand.
And all I'm saying is, it's to our advantage, when generally it isn't, so it's a
Oh,
good
I see.
program for us.
There are
But we pay-
few and far between.
We pay to be in Mart, the 46, 45, 8. But then.
We don't, but we pay it through the bills that we send to Mart, which send to the state. So,
Well, so
we-
it pays the Mart charge and the.
well, there is no Mart charge.
Okay.
All right. I don't want to get too much into the weeds.
Okay.
Here's what happens. We've got van drivers that are in the COA budget. We also have maintenance costs and some others that aren't on the books because the Friends pay it. Our vans have been paid for either through donations to the Friends or through grants. So whatever our outlay is, which is primarily the salaries for our van drivers, we send to Mart. Mart sends them to the state as though Mart's regional transportation costs, right?
As though, yes,
We're-
Mart was
we're-
actually paying
We're,
for it.
we're an extension of Mart, basically,
Okay.
and it takes off the charges that otherwise come to us, that were coming fully to us
Mhm.
for MBTA.
What's the 45.8?
That's the charge, because that's gonna be the charge on the sheet. We get
Okay.
reimbursed to offset that. In other words, it's gonna be built to
Okay.
Mart, okay? Then we're gonna take what we pay for our services, give it to Mart, that pays that off.
Okay,
We buy it down,
okay.
correct?
We get, basically it's a reimbursement.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, but it has to, the accounting has to flow, and then the money comes into our general fund.
Thank you.
I would say one thing about the capital now that, the big hitter there is 308,000 that's being asked for from Neshoba.
Yeah.
And essentially, that's replacement of the air conditioning at the Hale Auditorium, right? And water heaters at Center. And then they've got
Doors.
Center School door security, and then there's something about an energy management program. Anyway, they're the big hitter out of the whole group, if you look at that page. The rest of them are pretty routine.
Yeah. One thing I was gonna ask about is, given that Center is fairly new and Hale is older, would it make sense to split those? I know that the school district would just as soon send us one bill and then, or one assessment for that type of thing. But since there are buildings, should we split them out so that we can see if stuff is spiking at Center? I would expect fairly decent bills at Hale, but I wouldn't expect much at Center at this point, and, you know, I might make people ask for more clarification.
So the
I-
center, with,
Put it on
Neshoba
2 minutes.
already came in to talk to capital planning, and the center school, all the doors at all the schools are key card access. The system at center is, it runs on different software than all of the other schools. And the software has been intermittently failing and is no longer maintained by the manufacturer. You know how they'll phase out support for legacy software. Clearly, somebody made a questionable decision at some point, buying software that would phase out about 5, 6 years later. But put that aside, the result of it is, one, an inconvenience when central office staff want to get into center, because the school's always locked. They can't key their cards into the center school like from the central office like they can with every other school. They have to come down here and key it in. Well, so what? But the bigger thing is that intermittently, the thing just stops working. So if teachers are outside with kids, they go to the door, supposedly, and they can't get in. And then nobody can get in until IT gets called and comes in and fixes the system somehow.
But isn't there somebody in the building who could open the door?
I don't know that
At least
you,
you
I
can't
I don't
count
know.
on
You
I
could
would
just,
so hope.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about teachers taking kids outside the school. I'm sure they're not taking the whole school out. I mean, the point you're making about the software not being maintained is a good one, but
and this is
I'm
only
just not buying all their arguments.
this
is
is
all I'm
only
saying.
$17,000 though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, look, out of that 308,000, almost 200,000 of it is the
Right.
HVAC replacement at the auditorium and the water heaters at Hale.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's my point, is I'd understand if I see a couple 100,000 at Hale and, 50,000 or something at Center possibly, and then, it's just.
So
when
by
I-
breakout, again, to your point, how do you want that
I'm-
accounted for?
I'm just thinking of, you've got one line, it says,
You mean
Hale and
you
Center.
mean break out Hale and Center?
Yeah,
So on the budget form?
yeah,
I can-
I'm just asking if it'd make sense, so that,
Yeah,
people can understand where the money's going.
Yeah.
It's not gonna change it.
I try to save lines in the formula is what I do, but for that kind of thing, I don't have any problem
Yeah,
breaking the two.
no,
down.
I'm just asking a question.
Try to bundle some stuff together and call them improvements instead of each, because if I carry each line item for every capital project, then next thing I know, I'm 3 pages long.
No, but to Mr. Ryan's point, it would help the town understand better why we're spending 300,000, and that it's not all
Well,
for one school.
I'll break out Hale from, I'll add a line.
And could you, and,
I just said those are the big hitters on here.
and to the optics point, maybe you can find a better word than improvements. It makes it look like we're trying to improve the schools rather than just rehabbing them.
Okay, so here's the other thing, from year to year, you have to try to be consistent. So either, if you can imagine, right, as we
Yeah.
compare years, if I use more specific terms, I'm having to change I can't go year to year anymore. I can't say
All right.
highway this, highway that, or school this. I'm gonna have to, then I'm bouncing around every year, line to line, changing
Oh, yeah.
definitions. So I try to just, because they're gonna get explained by the capital planning committee's gonna know what they
Yeah.
are, and all the rest of it. So I'm trying to be more efficient with the use of the formula and lines and being able to drag across so you can see from year to year. Because that's the other thing, you'll have to start mismatching lines to try to catch up what's happening each year.
I withdraw the suggestion.
But I'll break out,
Yeah,
at least by school building.
I just thought that, exactly to your point, going forward, it would make sense too, because those are gonna be big hitters going forward too. And,
So,
How many highway vehicles, you know what, all of this can be vetted through capital. I don't want to get, as the town administrator pointed out, too much in the weeds. Is there anything more that you'd like to give us in your overview, Mr. Town Administrator?
no, I think I've covered everything.
All right. I think before we get to next steps, I'm going to open this up to my colleagues for questions about the budget that they haven't already asked, or the preliminary budget that they haven't already asked.
I have no further. I think this was very helpful. I always appreciate every year you going through it in this detail. And of course, there's always the weed questions, but we don't have to go into them.
Mr. Ryan?
No, that's.
Mrs.
I
Alvey?
understand
I think it
what
looks,
you're saying.
for an overview of this in early February or mid-February, I think it looks great. Capital is going to be a challenge, and capital planning knows that.
That's why we're counting on you,
Me personally?
as our liaison.
All right.
Me individually?
Yeah.
Like, I got to write a check for the
The difference?
between 690
Yeah,
and
tell him
where
to
we
hit,
wind
tell
up.
him to hit, hell with the 690, go down to 500, and if he doesn't make
There
it,
you
then hold
go.
him
I got to scratch a
responsible.
check.
So we're just counting on our liaison to keep us informed and help us understand the capital process,
I'll do my best, Mr. Chairman.
as you always do. Then I'm going to be the skunk in the garden party and ask a question, because I showed up at the FinCom meeting last Tuesday night as a liaison, and there was something that was raised, and it was curious to me. I didn't have an explanation. In rec, you've asked some of the salaries to be paid out of the revolving funds, and that was something I was unfamiliar with. That doesn't mean it isn't standard or hasn't had happened before, but certainly Laura understood it, but she wasn't familiar with it, and nobody on FinCom was. Maybe you could explain our ignorance.
Well, I'm certain Laura understood it.
I said she understood it.
Okay, I thought you did.
No, she understood it. I'm just
Okay.
saying,
She
she
couldn't
wasn't
explain it?
familiar with it. It wasn't a thing, a
'Cause I've been
budget
doing-
device. It wasn't a budget, yeah, she's been doing it, but it wasn't a budget device that she could explain, though, because she wasn't familiar with it outside of,
All right, so
Right.
here's what it is. They have a revolving fund.
Yeah.
They're one of the few, by law, revolving funds are only available and eligible if you're identified as a department or program in the statutes. Rec is one of them. You know, you've got ambulance, you've got other things. Not everybody would love a revolving fund if they could get it. Anybody that collects money on our side of the table would love to have control of that money. I don't like the idea of revolving funds to begin with, but the statutory available, we've got several of them and have. And so, the assistant that works for the rec program, that was approved by me in town meeting in this board, not you guys particularly when it was first created. And I said, but I want half of it coming out of the revolving fund. You can take, when we first began the rec program and hiring staff 2 decades ago, it was intended that they would be fully self-sufficient by now. And clearly they're not, because we're still spending a fair amount of. So I'm trying to inch us more forward, because they are another one that carry over a growing amount of revenue each year, which by law they can, though there's a cap.
they're very successful with their program.
Yeah, they got 20-something programs, and so what I'm saying is, and they want an increase for the director, and I said, we'll talk about an increase, but an increase that I support, if I do, it's all coming out of the revolving fund. So I'll, for the moment, maintain the base salary, which is what we've been doing. And so following the spirit of what we were trying to do, which is make them fully revenue self-sufficient, we've not got there, but I'm starting that now because of the funds that they're generating. And started with the half-time of the administrative assistant 2 or 3 years ago. They were taking out a revolving half of their
Yeah.
salary there, and I'm taking the other half.
But-
This year, I'm only changing it by saying I'm adding to it, by taking any raise that is approved for the rec director out of the revolving fund along with.
Right, and even though that was the process for the last 3 years, none of the assistant rec directors hung around. So it ended up being, they were just paid out of the budget side, not out of the revolving funds account.
No,
And again-
anytime it was occupied, it was split. We didn't pay anything out if it wasn't unoccupied. I mean,
No, you wouldn't pay it unoccupied, but it just seemed, maybe I misunderstood it, but the way it was explained to me.
we've only had one that stayed around. This one's been here a little while.
Yeah, the other ones have left. They left through half the year, so they never got.
So I don't understand what the question is.
No, the question here is, and again, I understand the advantages, just like I did before, and some of these other things. Is it an accepted I'm sure it's an accepted practice, is it a common practice to pay salaries out of revolving funds? I mean, that's something that the FinCom would like to know.
Yes, the answer is any lawful expense. In fact, revolving funds are intended to pay all costs. We've simply decided in this case, the other case is, in this case, as they were growing, we said, look, we started out with our own full budget and said, as you begin to gain revolving fund carryover balances beyond what you need, you should begin to pay more of the salary and expenses and anything else that goes with it.
It makes perfect sense. I just wasn't familiar with that kind of use for
The
revolving
statute
funds.
expressly allows you to take any.
I'm not saying it wasn't.
Well, you asked me where the source is. It's statutorily sourced. You can read the
Yeah,
statute.
okay, but have we done that with other salaries?
We don't have other revolving funds set up running programs like this,
Okay.
but we would.
So that's the short answer to my question.
Yeah.
Because they asked me, and I said I was unfamiliar with that. now I understand a little better, and now I can explain to FinCom as my role.
And I'm gonna
liaison.
continue to increase their share out of their budget each year coming from the revolving fund.
Yeah, and
Okay.
As Bill says, I distinctly remember it because I had heartburn years ago over some of the rec stuff when I was on FinCom. And I remember that agreement, yep, all right, we're gonna pay half. But eventually, we want you guys to be self-sufficient, and we've just never gotten there. And 20 years later, but
And not surprisingly,
okay.
and not surprisingly, because creatures of habit,
Sure.
you know, they don't wanna pay any now.
So,
Yeah, well,
You-
and the thing is, we did the, you know, it's part of the reason that we, years ago, the fire department was asking about a revolving. fund.
Everybody
And
wants a
And they were
revolving
gonna
fund.
pay for their ambulance
Yeah.
out of their receipts, and we
Right.
said, yeah, no, we'll just, we'll
I
keep it
don't,
as
I
is."
don't like the notion as a budget tool, because,
Okay.
first of all, there's departments that can't raise money, they don't get fees from anything. What are they supposed to do? And everybody who generates fees wants to retain fees so they can spend it for their needs. And then you start breaking down from year to year, it's important to have better control from one source and allocate your resources where you need them year to year. If everybody's got their own protected money, you're in tough shape.
Again, as I said, I was unfamiliar with this budget tool, so I couldn't explain it to FinCom. I said I would bring it to the town administrator's attention. I just want, again, it was not a budget tool that was familiar with me, so I couldn't comment on it. I have
I would
much
think
better
that they would be
understanding.
supportive of this, to save
It
taxpayers'
has
money.
it has nothing to do with support.
No, no.
It just has me understanding it and explaining it.
I'm pretty sure the schools do it, so they'll have a revolving fund for like the fees from afternoon kindergarten. And that'll help pay for or defray some of the expenses.
But it was never, it was never one-on-one. That money would go into the larger budget, and then the larger budget, those fees were paid.
All right, so I'll just leave it to you. If you'd like to talk to our accountant, feel free.
Mr. Town Administrator.
All right, so I've given my spiel.
And that was
Completely
satisfactory.
lawful,
If
expected,
it wasn't satisfactory.
Supposed to be done, it's the right thing to do. Other than all those reasons, I really don't know.
I tell you, I assured the FinCom that it was, that if you were doing it, it was the appropriate thing. I just wanted to be in a position so I could explain it better, Mr. Town Administrator. So I'm ready to move on. If your answer hadn't been satisfactory, I would have told you. There's a recreation, no, he's not, he just, all right. He just wants us to quit. All right, any other questions for the Town Administrator before he gives us an idea of what's coming up next at the budget?
I just keep working the budget, and then the next time, in 2 weeks, I've got my joint boards, which is basically just a state of the town, and for those that participate on the revenue side as assessors, capital planning will be there, both school representatives are invited, whether they come or they don't. It's a 30,000-foot overview, it's not to get into the weeds. And then after that, I got a month until I balance a budget and come to you at our second meeting in March saying, here's what I recommend.
Any questions about what's coming up next?
Nope.
No, sounds good.
Any other questions
Great.
about the general operation of the town for the Town Administrator? Seeing none, I would ask permission for the Town Administrator to make his way back to the friendly town of Orange. Seeing no one wants to hold him,
I'm thinking about it.
have a safe trip. What?
Never mind.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. All right, we're doing well. I keep warning you, though, that there's going to be some meeting that we're going to be here a lot longer than we have been. That brings us to liaison reports. Let's start with Mrs. Salvi. Tell us about CPC.
CPC has before it a proposal from, they're sort of zeroing in on the project that they will be bringing to town meeting. They have a proposal from SMOP that maybe Ingeborg can talk more about, a small version of a deed restriction buy down. There is a project that maybe I shouldn't mention the name of, proposed land conservation purchase that is going before CPC. The town hall reno figure that I mentioned before.
We're late.
We were up in the wrong board, up in the planning board. We're supposed to be here.
Okay.
My name is Richard Reel, and we've come here to find some information about the post that's being planted up on Walcott Street. That was petitioned by the electric company.
Yeah, you kind of missed that, and we're in the middle of something else.
I see.
I'll ask my colleagues, do we want to turn from Mr. Salvi's liaison report to try and address the citizens?
Sure.
I think so.
I got to be frank with you, we've already voted on it.
That's what?
We've already voted on it.
Okay, I have a quick question. It's being moved onto my land, and I want to know what kind of liability I'm going to be responsible for with them moving it onto my land.
I would have much rather answered this question with the town administrator present, but we just released him.
I'm hard of hearing, go ahead.
I would have much rather answered this question with the town administrator present and his
Right.
experience, but we just released him. We're at the tail end of our meeting. And I don't have an answer for you, other than I believe, and I can be subject to correction easily, is that the poles belong to the power company, and they're responsible for them. You don't have any liability for them, as far as I know. And I understand that not just from my work here in town, but also in my other life as an attorney. I don't know if that's satisfactory to you.
Well, I think that'll be fine for now. I guess I'll get a hold of the electric company and perhaps talk with somebody there.
Have you talked to anybody at Hudson Light and Power?
No, I haven't.
Could you do me a favor and write down,
Well, I'm just gonna give them this. This is the correspondence. And they would have to get an easement. So just, that's all the information we have on it. And it shows the pole locations and,
And we did hold a public hearing, we opened it, we closed it, and notice was sent to all the abutters, but if,
I was just in the wrong meeting. I
Yeah.
thought it was upstairs.
the public hearing said it was before the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
why don't
You
we,
mean easement, don't you have to approve the easement?
we don't do that. That's between him and the utility company.
He still has to approve it though, right? It's gonna be on his land.
No.
no, I think it's gonna be in the right of way.
So this could be
Well,
the first 5 feet?
I think the first question you have to answer is whether it's in the municipal right-of-way or on your land, and that's something they can help you with. What they can do is spray paint the location of the pole, and they can survey it, okay? So that's the first thing you need to do, because our meeting was about a typographical error, was not about the pole location. That was an earlier item. So tonight, we just approved the typographical error. But in terms of your property, you really should speak with them, and you do have property rights. This is not a taking issue. This is just
No.
clarifying the location of the pole on the ground, and they will spray paint it for you.
Thank you.
I think Ms. Hegman-Clark, our Selectwoman, Ms. Hegman-Clark is giving you excellent advice.
Okay.
And you can always get back to us if the Hudson Light and Power doesn't give you the answers you're looking for.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you, but
And you have the name of the
Thank you.
woman who presented, Pat, can you read that off of that?
Well, that's what I was.
Pat Laverty, man.
Pat Laverty.
Yeah, you have his signature on the bottom of that letter.
He's
Yes.
very responsive.
That's who
Pat
you want,
Laverty.
that's who you want to talk to.
Yeah, it's Pat.
thank you again.
Oh, Patrick, Pat Laverty.
Okay.
Spent the whole hour listening about legalizing marijuana.
Oh. More fun than a pole, right?
Oh, yeah.
I thank my colleagues for going out of order, just to address that. Thank you, Ms. Hegman-Clark. Mr. Selvey, you want to complete your liaison report?
Yeah, just on CPC, there are two aspects, as far as I know, from talking to Courtney on the town hall project. The $30,000 roof and the $175,000 design, but obviously I'm going to try to determine if that's still going forward. There is a final phase, a landscaping phase to the Pine Bluff Recreation Project, fairly small, only about $20,000. This should be it. And there had been some talk about some soccer field improvements at Pompano, behind Pompano, but that has been taken off. It just is impractical because of wetlands. Capital planning is getting deep into the season, as you can imagine. We met with police, Neshoba, And building, on last Thursday, we're having a meeting this Thursday, I forget who we're meeting with. The edict, I'm a terrible liaison to edict, but I should tell you that they were meeting tonight with the planning board.
What is the edict?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Economic
Economic.
Development and Industrial Commission. They were meeting with the planning board about proposed changes to the sign bylaw. I don't know how that went, obviously, since I was here. And,
Well, you told us when we were doing liaison appointments that it might be difficult for you to follow that, but you expected after February you'd be able to attend more regularly.
I'm still expecting that.
So
Yeah,
we'll
that should
hold
be
you to
all right.
that. We'll hold you to that.
All right, fine. So,
Anything else?
that's it.
Thank you, and we appreciate all the hard work you're doing with CPC. This is a tough time, and but it's crucial to the budget, as town administrator was explaining. So thank you again for your efforts. Ms. Egerman-Clark?
Well, so SMART's doing a lot of stuff. Got some articles proposed for town meeting. Unfortunately, I'm not well prepared, but one of them is this deed restriction buy down, which they spoke to us about when we had our joint boards meeting. And it's called iShop, which stands for Stowe. Well, I can't tell you, I'm ill-prepared, but it's in response to some of the public comments that SMART has received. They're also looking at reducing the membership of SMART to 5 members as opposed to 7, because we are consistently we hit quorum issues a number of times. So that'll be coming before the town. And then with respect to, and yes, there is a joint effort on land preservation, public affordable housing with, that's being worked on, and I think that may have hit the press. Jim?
I can't remember, so I'm not gonna say
I think,
where it is. I think it did, but
I know they're,
I'm
but,
dead if I'm wrong.
yeah,
So,
so, but
You're dead
the
either way.
the boards are working very productively together to try to balance open space as well as affordable housing interests. So that will be something of interest. And then with respect to the Recreation Committee, I have been a terrible liaison to that committee, but I think you sort of talked about what they're doing, and Jim, so I think that's all I need to say.
All right, well, thank you. You probably, the best thing you can do for SMART is tell them not to be hang dog.
Hang on?
Hang dog.
Hang dog.
Be a little more optimistic.
Well, it's a little hard to say when
I know.
we have a track record of 0, and everyone fights us tooth and nail.
but that may be changing.
And that's sales. You gotta go in there every morning. Like you just sold 1,000 units the day before.
Well, one of the things that was in correspondence is that it appears that I think it's DHCD relented and are counting some of the affordable units up by the airport. I guess they, and I should say Jesse and the planning board ended up making a very good case, and they relented after they were told that because they were not family units, they were over 55, they weren't gonna count. I don't know.
Yeah, that was discussed at the last meeting
Yeah,
also.
and that was, that would have been a big thing. I think there's 4 units up there that are counting towards, our affordability restriction, and all of a sudden they came, we were told, oh, no, those aren't gonna count because they're over 65, we want family units.
Right.
And
Right. They were about
so,
that. That's good.
really, kudos to the planning board for getting that straightened out, really.
Yeah.
I've got a couple things. One is, I don't know if people have seen it, I think it's been in the paper and it is posted up on the website, but the environmental police, in conjunction with the Stowe Police Department, are offering a boating safety course, and that's going to be held in April, the 3rd, 5th, 10th, and 12th. It's actually a 4-night course. It's free, and it's going to be at the community center. anybody who's interested in learning about boating safety can contact the police department or go on their website. And the sign-up is actually, appears to be, I checked it out tonight, it's through the environmental police. You have to find the correct course. But
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. And just for the record, this does include boating safety, including Lake Boone.
I do believe that Lake Boone has boats on it.
Yes,
I
so-
think we should specifically exclude.
No, I just want to
Why
make.
did you ask that question?
I just wanted to make sure Lake Boone was mentioned. With
Oh,
Mr. Hudson.
Okay,
Yep.
so if
And
they're searching
I-
for keywords, boom, there it is.
Yep.
No, just to make Mr. Hawks happy in his absence. Continue, Mr. Ryan. I'm sorry for interrupting.
All right. I ended up talking to the fire department, and there's actually quite a bit of good stuff coming out of there. One thing that I was kind of curious about is the grants that they end up getting every year for the the fire safe program and the senior safe program. One of the things, I had always thought that these were just grants that, you kind of just say, I want one, and you get one. It turns out that Captain Benoit has, for many years, been writing very good grant requests, and we tend to get fairly decent ones. And so really, kudos to Captain Benoit. And this year, we ended up getting another $6,000 for that, and basically, it ends up getting used for Fire Prevention Week, SpringFest demonstrations, summer camp programs, fire department open house when they show, stuff like that. And then the Senior Safe program, they actually do home visits, smoke detector, battery changes for the seniors, and things like that. So it is a competitive grant program. You don't just get it. And like I said, when I talked to Chief Landry, he was very complimentary of Captain Benoit for all the work that he's been doing over the years and making sure that we get our fair share, shall we say.
Maybe we can put him to work for other departments.
The other thing is, it's hard to believe that it's been about a year since we appointed Lieutenant Evers as a training officer. And what Chief Landry had told me was that, it has been a year, and they've been doing an awful lot of training. And his comment was that, our people are more prepared than ever to meet the challenge. And it's been working out very well. In addition to that, Captain Benoit also, I think you guys may have seen there was an article in the paper that was put out by the Fire Academy that Captain Benoit just completed a 13-week Chief Fire Officer program. It's quite an extensive course. I've mentioned it before when he got in, it is a competitive course to get in. It's not like you just go down and say you want to be there. And he got in, he completed it successfully, and some of the stuff that they end up doing and covering in that 13-week is personnel management, budgets, ethics, fire service law, strategic planning, and administrative stuff, that focuses pretty much on the fire service. And Chief Landry mentions that he's seen some good stuff for the department come out of that training, and he's starting to incorporate that and working with Lieutenant Evers to try to bring some of the other firefighters along and provide additional training that's based on some of that. So that's all good stuff. Along with that training, one of the things that they have been doing too is paying more attention to cancer prevention. One of the big selling points when we ended up doing the fire department and when we've done the walkthroughs is to try to keep the contamination in or out of the living areas. I guess it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue as And Chief Landry mentioned that a good friend of his, who was in his 50s, recently died of cancer that was broadly related to the fire service. So Chief Landry is putting in, and he put out specific instructions at the beginning of this year on some issue or some items that will hopefully reduce the risks, and the new fire station will actually be helping that because of the way they keep it clean. And, being able to wash their equipment and things like that. So new things are being put in, and it's helpful. And then the last part really is that he mentions that, they've been in the new building over a year now, and it's, they love it. So it's, it, as he puts it, he wants to reinforce how much of a positive impact it's had on the department day to day, as well as the future of the organization. Operations, administration, and training have all recognized major benefits from the space. So this is, a fairly long update that I ended up getting from the chief. If anybody's interested in the whole thing, I've tried to summarize it so that I wouldn't take up a lot of time. But, it's, they're doing good things, and, a lot of good things are coming together for the fire department. So it's, I think that's probably, pretty much all I've got for right now.
Well, thank you for interfacing with fire safety and thoroughly updating on that. Your chair has very little report. LACAC, which administers PEG, is hiring a new executive director to follow and not replace Ann Van Tyne. That, I think, is coming out in the near future. The Council on Aging did not meet last week because of the ice storm. There's some training that's going to be held in Acton and then also in Marlborough for Council on Aging members, and a lot of the members are going. I refuse to go unless I find out that they're going to offer food. I'll report more on that later. FinCom, I think I've already told you, in the course of the town administrator's report, met with, and they're reviewing the budget applications. And I think I also mentioned that I'm going down to the graves tomorrow, but even for a limited time, to talk to cemetery. But they are selling lots. They just sold one on Saturday. I know that for a fact. Anything else?
Nothing.
I have a question, not for you've indicated that the next meetings may be fairly busy, but I was wondering if, as part of your liaison reporting, in the future, we could have the police or the fire talk about how they're trained to address mental health issues. I mean, I know that they get special training on this, and I think it might be good for us to understand how they approach that, without giving obviously any definitive examples, but I wouldn't mind
Defining examples.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a little presentation on how our communities are dealing with mental health these days.
Let me ask, just so that I understand, is that something that would be in the way of a liaison report, or do you want that to be on an agenda item for an upcoming meeting?
I don't know if it, I'll answer it this way. If they think it's worthy of a 10-minute presentation, by all means, I'd love to have it as an agenda item. If they think that, we can just have a liaison report summarize whether they need more support on this, or whether they believe they're fully trained, or I just...
How about, I'll take it, I'll have a conversation with them and see what I can get, and I'll bring it up in a liaison report.
Okay, that sounds good, and we'll see.
At that point, I'll see, you know, I can kind of toss it out whether we want to see if we want to have it for a future meeting.
Right.
And, you know,
Yeah.
I would say, given that town meeting's probably going to be coming up pretty quick.
Yeah, it may not be an immediate thing, but I think
Yeah.
long-term, because I think the population should know what resources are available to them.
No, I think it's a good idea, and I think, to that point, first off, just in terms of scheduling, April, we're gonna be able to catch our breath, I think, early April, so that could be an agenda item. In addition, to get a nuanced and a more complete understanding of mental health assistance here in this community, you might also want to hear from Council on Aging and their social worker.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it, the town social worker.
The town social worker
Right.
who works under the Council on Aging. And I go to the meetings and we hear the outreach reports every month about the people they've assisted. So it's not just the emergency responders, it's also people who are in crisis who manage to get themselves into Council on Aging, which is our, for lack of a better word, our social safety net.
Even for younger people?
Not so much for younger people, but not just for older people either.
The social worker works, she works with the Council on Aging, but she's independent,
Right.
so
No, I knew
technically.
we had a social worker, so, yeah, whatever makes sense.
Yeah.
I just think the population might be interested in this subject, so.
Well, I do know also from having conversations with Sergeant Solis in the past that, you know, when he comes across people that are not breaking the law, however, he believes that they need help, he has reached out in the past to try to get people help. You know, it's nothing that he can do legally, and it's not anything that he's actually required to do, I believe, but he reaches out, you know, if you know, he tries to find them a bed in recovery. If
It's
he,
an impossibility these days.
but, you know, talking to Sergeant Solis, he has done that in the past when he has, and I'm sure he's continuing to do things like that.
Okay.
But I
Well,
don't
see
know
what-
if that's the kind of thing that you're
Well,
looking
just
for,
see,
too.
I just think, you know, if the population is interested in what services are available to them, is that worth having a brief summary at a Board of Selectmen meeting when we're not really busy?
Sure.
You know, from the
Mhm.
town nurse, and social worker and police, so
Mhm.
we don't have to define it all right now, but.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. We can keep stewing about it, keep on us to make sure that we do that.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll end up in a public forum someday.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's all.
But I've actually written it down, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll
So,
remember it.
Any other questions? Or any other thoughts?
This way, yeah.
Then I will take a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor by unanimous consent? Thank you.
Okay.
I've got 3 hours, actually 2 hours and 50 minutes.